Right, welcome back. Now, you've seen some of the front pages. The daily graphic stays on the GFA issue. We have new faces there. Their photographs captured in the middle page. Kofi Amwa heads football management body. That's the story there. The World Cup kicks off today. Russia, Saudi Arabia, the first match. The Times talks about the tragedy. 11 died, 54 injured in horrific accident. That's the story. Students' loan increased by 50%. And then deal with reckless motor riders on Sanla. Chief Imam to the police. And the Business Finder this morning, policy rate to hit 14% in 2019. Ghana risks losing FDI over GMPC's $50 million loan to Ministry of Finance. And the guide has this story. Tony Letha dams Oyeletha. That's a front page story. The Suhum crash is still here. 10 killed. Those are some of the papers this morning. This morning, my studio has been taken over by 3 vandals. First to my extreme left, vandal Dr. Ahmed Jinapor from the University of Education. Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope you're doing great.
Not bad.
And then vandal Dr. Clement Apak, MP for Busa South.
Chief.
Chief vandal Dr. Clement Apak is also here. Member of Parliament for Busa South. And then finally, vandal Japan Mesa, member for Secondary Constituency, also here. Good morning, gentlemen. And I'm sure your colleague vandals are watching.
Very well.
I don't know if we are still vandal. We are old vandal.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Old vandal.
Once a vandal,
always a vandal. Grateful. Yes. And thanks so much for joining us this morning. Let's start the conversation this morning. Up there in Russia is a World Cup starting today. We're told that the first match we see Russia play Saudi Arabia. Quick one on that, then we can move on. Dr. Jinapor, I mean, we missed out. We're seeing some revival, if we can put it that way. What lessons can we learn? What has happened in the past few days to Ghana football? What is happening in Russia? The fact that we are not there. What lessons can we take into perhaps the next decade?
Well, I think to start with, just yesterday there was a balloting for 2026.
Right.
And we are told Canada, USA, and Mexico jointly won, beating Morocco. And if you listen to the reportage, one of the things that comes out is that this is the first time that they've had such a transparent process, and this is what the result has yielded. And it tells you that when it comes to soccer generally, it's not only Ghana that we have problems. Even if FIFA, you're talking of just simple balloting, they are saying this is the first time. It means that there used to be a problem. So if you ask me what are the lessons that we take out of it, interestingly, I happened to be in Russia not too long ago. I was in Moscow for about 8 days, and I happened to have visited one or two of their stadia. I mean, they have 2 stadia in Moscow itself that they'll be playing. Beautiful city. I mean, extremely neat. The only challenge is the language. They refuse to speak English. They refuse to speak English. So what can Ghana take out of it? I mean, we started the process. If you look at the daily graphic today, government has set up an interim management committee. And I've heard people speak about the committee. Of course, as human beings, some will like the composition, others would more or less have reservations towards it. But it's instructive to know that it's an interim management committee. And in fact, by virtue of the injunction that was granted to government, their mandate is probably just for 10 days.
Right.
Until government goes back to what? To ask for extension. So Ghanaians have to look at it that way. And when I say Ghanaians, you look at the front page of the Daily Graphic, it says Dr. Kofi Amwa takes over from Nyantakyi. No, he's not taking over from Nyantakyi. Still remains the substantive GFA president.
No, he's not. He's resigned.
Oh, he's resigned. Oh, sorry about that. No. I mean, you're right. He's resigned, but he hasn't taken over from him. I think people have to know that. But moving forward, right, as I said, look, as a country, we are a developing country. And in terms of development, it's not just about infrastructure, but in terms of our code of conduct, our ethics, corruption. I can tell you that, look, even though I can't say when you go to the justice system there's no corruption, but people based on the announced expose are mindful. Today, even among ourselves, if a student comes to me as it used to be, he wants to give me 2 or 3 tubers of yam.
Yeah.
Oh yes, some of the judges were taking boots.
I see.
Some of the referees we are told. So it's unfortunate, but I think government will have to expedite action in coming out with prosecution, because if you remember, Kwesi Nyantakyi was reported to the CID on the 20th of May, and as it stands now, I don't know whether he's even been charged, and I find it quite unfortunate when, even after all the brouhaha and the noise that was being made, the CID, even after inviting all these people, including Nyantakyi, had to call unannounced to give them the video to look at. So if you have charged somebody and you haven't even seen the tape, on what basis were you charging somebody? So when Ghanaians tend to be cynical about the what is going to come out when it comes to this issue, I think they have a legitimate concern based on the actions and inactions of the CID. So I want to see some kind of speed going on. The Attorney General is doing well in terms of getting this injunction and trying to shape the GFA, but it must move simultaneously with with prosecution, because the charges or the quote and unquote, the allegations that are being made against them are very grievous, and I want to see them in court by now.
All right, I'm grateful. Honorable Japan Mesa, so the World Cup is starting. You can tie that in with Ms. Amwa heading, Dr. Amwa heading an interim committee that we are supposed to see. Lessons for us as a country.
Well, I guess it's appropriate that I say good morning to my colleague panelists and our cherished viewers, particularly my constituents in Second D.
That's right.
And also to take this opportunity to wish our brothers in the Muslim fraternity happy Eid. We all know that we've ended the fasting. Yes. Today is their day of rest.
Right.
And tomorrow is a celebration of the Eid itself. So we use this opportunity to wish them well. That the fasting that they had, they would derive the blessings that they sought from Allah, so that prosperity may be their portion in the coming years. GFA, and it's important that I respond briefly to what Dr. Jenapo was saying. You see, yes, the police had to get the tapes from Anas because he had a source document. And so it was important that at the time that the president lodged the complaint and Kwesi Nyantakyi was invited, they took his statement. Of course, they had to await the video to enable them proceed with further investigation. Otherwise, how were they going to proceed? Because allegations that were made were contained on the tape. So necessarily, they didn't have a choice than to wait for the tape. And I understand that they actually requested for the tapes. And they were told that, well, they could only get access to them after the premiering of the, the movie, if you like.
So is it legitimate to ask, based on what was he charged?
Of course, you can charge people provisionally.
Okay. So
based on
that person's statement.
Based on the complaint
from the
complainant lodges,
okay,
and the statement, the caution statement that is taken from the suspect, if you like. Based on that, you can charge the person provisionally, grant him bail, and then after you complete your investigations, you can either maintain the provisional charge or substitute it with what is appropriate under the circumstances. I mean, I was looking forward to going to Russia in this year's World Cup.
What happened?
Unfortunately, we missed out. Of course, if your country is not playing, there's not much motivation to want you to go. You know, we all as Ghanaians were saddened that we missed that. There was a glorious opportunity if we hadn't messed up in some of our initial matches, you know, to have qualified, you know. And so, yes, I expected the GFA to have started the process of rebuilding the team. Unfortunately, this incident came up that has led to resignation of some executives at GFA, and the government taking steps to dissolve it and culminating in the setting up of an interim body to manage football in the country. We all know that football is a passion of many Ghanaians. The fact that the legal process is ongoing cannot lead to a vacuum. And so I guess that is the reason why this body has been set up to, as it were, manage the process or the space until some conclusive and definitive resolution is had to the GFA crisis. And so I will urge the people of Ghana to support the interim team. We all know the status of GFA. It's essentially a private entity, save that because they manage the national teams on behalf of the state, government funding goes there to pay for that running of the national teams and all that. And I understand that even as we speak, they've been engaged in some friendlies, and so without a management, what is the fate of the players and the officials who have been sent out there to represent Ghana? So it's important that this step was taken to, as it were, seal whatever vacuum that may have been created with the resignation of the president of GFA and the steps leading to the resolution. Of course, that will be held within the court or the judicial system. The government has gone in for an interim injunction to stop the officials from engaging in any act or omissions that would lead to some problems for us going forward. And so in 10 days, I expect that our application will be repeated, served on the GFA, whatever is remained of them. Of course, I mean, it's an entity that exists, except that it's their executive that have been affected.
Right.
And so the body will have to respond to as to whether government should proceed with dissolving it or not. And the court will weigh both arguments and then make some definitive pronouncements on that. But then again, it's important that going forward, whatever has to be done to sanitize the space, build a solid team that will ensure that we go to Qatar 2022 is done. And I believe that that is what government intends to do.
Okay, I'm grateful. Dr. Park, so initial comments, lessons for what has happened to us and the fact that we missed out on Russia?
Well, Bright, it's been a while, and I think the last time I was on this program was the very week that this story broke, had taken shape, so to speak. But as we are politicians, I think it's also fair that I extend felicitations to the Muslim community in Bulsa South, particularly the chief imam and his followers for the yeoman's job that they have performed on all of us. It is our hope that Allah has indeed accepted our prayers, and we will do our best to be with them, either in person or in spirit, as they celebrate the Eid tomorrow. Of course, I can't forget my good friend Aminu. I think that we are in a very interesting context. For some reason, it's as though the stars have connived to let what is happening happen at this time. I mean, what are the odds that we will be discussing the rot in the football fraternity in our country as a consequence of the Anat's expose at the time when the World Cup has taken off? There's a good reason for that. And I think that this is to allow us to do a detailed, sober reflection and do what is needed to sanitize a game that we all know we love so much, so that it can serve us well. So that when, we are giving our all in terms of our human and even financial resources in support of the game, we know somebody is not somewhere trying to use that leverage, which is indeed a privilege given to that person by the people of this country, whether it is a private entity or not, to do work on our behalf. So for me, I would want to agree with my two, the submissions made by my two colleagues. But what I want to add is to emphasize the need to move with speed. Yes, investigations can be quite laborious, and you would have to take your time to dot your your I's and cross your T's. But when a matter of this nature comes to the public domain, where certain impressions are created, proven or not, and yet there seems to be some level of inertia in as far as the people's expectations are concerned about the formal aspects of looking into the issue, it creates another layer of a perceptional problem in terms of perhaps somebody wanting to delay the process because there is a need not to reveal certain details. So I would also want to urge the law enforcement agencies mandated to look into this matter, to do it in a way that would give Ghanaians the assurance that no stone is being left unturned in as far as getting to the bottom of this issue is concerned, and that indeed those who are culpable certainly face the full rigors of the law. It is unfortunate that we don't get to go to the World Cup. I mean, every Ghanaian boy, girl growing up, we always know what we do. How many of us have not engaged in one competition or the other? Some of us have broken limbs at secondary school playing football. Those of us who grew up in rural areas who didn't have access to the football, I remember we would take an old piece of sock from your dad, you stuff it with pieces of plastic just to create a ball to play. So the role of football...
Socks ball.
Yeah, socks ball, there you go. So the role of football in our society and the way we view it definitely requires that whatever is wrong with the game, we try to resolve it so that we can move on. But it's unfortunate that we are not in Russia. We can find another day to debate why we are not there, and if perhaps some of these revelations may have contributed to our absence in Russia. But we'll leave that for another day.
All right, I'm grateful. Let's move on. Let's move on and take a look at this one. The Times this morning, passport birth set for Ghana card inadequate. The minority says it is leaving no stone unturned in ensuring that the voter ID was considered a legitimate reference document in the ongoing national ID exercise. Now, in this vein, the minority hinted that it will seek interpretation of the Supreme Court in its earlier ruling in the Abu Ramadan versus Electoral Commission in the run-up to the 2016 election. Now, that's the story. If you go to the guide, page 6...
You are looking at Hanzad. You are looking at Hanzad.
I haven't finished.
You are going to seek an interpretation of the decision of the Supreme Court from the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
but is it unusual?
How is that?
Honorable Master, just allow me. The Guide newspaper has the same story. Minority heads to Supreme Court over NI. It has maintained its boycott of the process, and according to the court, they want a proper interpretation of what that ruling by the court means. Now, if you go to the Guide, page 15, there's a story that I want to draw your attention to. It talks about a group condemning minority over Ghana card. The independent Zango communicators, I don't know whether the spelling is wrong, but that's the word, Zango, have chided the minority for their intended plan to boycott the national ID. According to the group, the minority's views on the matter are mediocre and juvenile, especially when we are dealing with imperative national issues. Okay, so that's the story. The key things here, the passport and the birth certificate. Now, Honorable Jepamesa, certainly you do not seem to agree with the minority. The issues about the use of the passport birth cert, the argument is that you will restrict people from getting onto the Ghana ID card.
That clearly cannot be true.
What is the truth?
The truth is contained in the law. And I have a copy of the Act here. And with your kind permission, if I may read. This is the National Identity Register Amendment Act 2017. Act 950. Section 3 of this Act amended Section 8 of the Parent Act. And it says, Section 8 of the principal enactment is amended A by the substitution for subsection 1 of 1. The authority shall require an individual who applies for an entry to be made in the register to submit any of the following identity documents: A, a birth certificate; B, a valid passport; C, a valid residence permit; D, a valid certificate of acquired citizenship; and E, any other information as may be required by the authority.
Right.
And no, please, it's important. And B, by the substitution of subsection 2 of, then it goes 2, where an applicant is unable to submit any of the documents specified under subsection 1, the authority shall require that the applicant A, or that a relative of the applicant, to identify the applicant on the oath. B, 2 persons determined by the board to identify an applicant on the oath where the applicant has no known relative.
Those 2 persons must be registered first.
It doesn't say in the law.
Okay. Yesterday, I got the NIA to say that those 2 persons must be registered.
I have read the legislation to you. Where in it does it say that those 2 persons must register?
But the authority,
because if that was the case, no, I don't have a problem. I'm reading the law.
Yes. Okay. All right. So go ahead.
I'm not speaking for anyone.
Okay.
We are interpreting the provisions of the law that was passed by the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, made up of members of both the majority and the minority.
It doesn't mean Parliament cannot get something wrong.
You see, unless of course you want to tell the people of Ghana that on the day,
it's not about telling anything.
On the day of the passage of this bill into law, when your own members, particularly Honorable Ama Kofi Boah, spoke extensively in his contribution to the report of the Committee of Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs.
At the committee level.
In the plenary, and I have a copy of the Hansard, okay, where he spoke extensively that the removal of these IDs has come in at an opportune time. It is giving us an opportunity to clean our registration system and identify people who were Ghanaians from non-Ghanaians, and that he comes from a border constituency, and he has seen many people come into Ghana from Ivory Coast using our national health insurance card to access services in this country. And so the removal of the NHIS and the voters card and everything was opportune. Ama Kofi Boah.
I wasn't there.
Today, but does it matter? Does it matter whether you were or not?
And I'm going to have to verify the authenticity of
I have a copy of the Hansard.
I guess you need to direct anything you want to say to me.
You see,
I'm the one talking to you.
It's unfortunate, okay? This country hasn't got time. We don't. Yet, our elected officers think they can play politics with everything.
People can't go to court if they feel so.
I haven't said that they can't go to court. Okay. But did you read their statement? Do you read it? They are going to seek to court, not to seek an interpretation of the Constitution. No, that's not what they're going to do. They're going to seek an interpretation of the ruling of the Supreme Court in the Abu Ramadan case. Under which jurisdiction?
So
under which jurisdiction?
So you think they are wrong?
They are only being mischievous. You see, consistent with their nature. When they take a decision in Parliament and their party executives whisper into their heads, like they did during the American security agreement, they agreed.
They didn't.
At the committee, unanimous. Now, when the committee report came out and their party executives heard, the next morning they rushed to Parliament, held a caucus meeting with them, and insisted that they change their position and say that it was a majority position. Great. So they went back and said, no, we've changed our position. It should be a majority. He said, well, count the numbers at the committee. You were in the majority. And we, the minority at the committee, agree with you.
Are you saying it's wrong to have a change of mind? I've heard.
I'm saying to you that they haven't. You see,
Boutros Ghali
I don't have a problem with any. I agreed.
So what is the point in this? That they agreed in Parliament and now they have changed their mind and you're worried about it?
Based on what?
And they have raised
and
the
I'm
issue
saying
that
that
the vote, if you take out the voter ID card,
right.
you will disenfranchise people because that Ghana card, one of its mandate is to be used as a voter ID.
Did you listen to the provisions that I read from the amended act?
I did.
How does that disenfranchise anybody? In fact, even under the Electoral Commission process, if you do not have any of the identification that you are required to have to procure a voter's ID card, is it not a requirement that you can get 2 people to confirm your nationality and that when they do so and fill a form, you are given an opportunity to register? So what has changed? What has changed?
I see.
Such that today, they've turned around after Asiedun Ketia and Co. has spoken to them to change their position. And they are your party executive. I have said that your party executive.
You are telling me that
I sit in Parliament.
You don't know that.
And we know and observe the kinds of things that happen.
We have the right to decide what we do.
Right.
And we have the right to decide what we don't do.
Wasn't he there 2 days ago? Was he not in Parliament 2 days ago? Was he not there?
If we analyze the situation and we see that something that has been done is not going to augur well for the well-being of the people, we have every reason.
We don't have time
to reverse.
To be wasting.
It is our right. We are exercising our right. Exercise yours.
You'll be fair to Mr. Sidhu.
I'm asking
people. You want to say that you were there when
I'm saying to you that the very day that they
make your
came
point.
You were there when he told
you.
You
were there. You saw him come to us at the caucus meeting. Please.
Didn't he hold the caucus meeting with you on the morning?
Please.
US Security Committee report.
Please
speak about matters you know, not matters you don't know.
Please, you wrap up for me. Go ahead. Since you were
don't go into the realm of conjecture.
Wrap up for me. Let me get Dr.
You see, it's unfortunate that we all, as a collective, take decisions, and then when, for whatever reason best known to them, they claim to be patriotic citizens of this country.
So because we are
building,
that makes us unpatriotic now.
Dr. Park,
we are building.
When he uses language like that,
let him land. Okay,
it's not fair.
Come to you.
We are building a database of Ghanaians. Parliament sat, deliberated on the bill that had been submitted, which was in part to satisfy the Supreme Court decision in the Abu Ramadan case. Memorandum to the bill. Unfortunately, yesterday I had a copy of the bill with me, but I left it in the office before I left. I would have brought it here for everyone to read and see. The rationale was contained in the bill. Okay. It went to committee. No, Brett, it's important.
No, but I don't have a lot of time.
I know, but
let me get Dr. Park.
This is the only subject we have to discuss.
Yes.
Let's deal with it.
Yes.
No, let me finish. I will just give me a minute and then I'll wrap up.
Quickly, please, quickly.
You see, it goes to committee. Members of both sides deliberate on the bill, find the need to recommend to Parliament to pass it under a certificate of urgency. It comes to the floor. We all debate it. Your members made significant contribution to the debate. We go through the process of passing the bill under a certificate of urgency. And then in November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, you now realize that what?
It is wrong.
Come on.
Okay.
Please.
Dr. Park, so his argument is that once the House...
I'm not going to dwell on his
agreed.
argument. I am going to proffer mine.
Why did you change your mind?
I'm not going to dwell on his argument. I'm going to proffer mine.
He's asking.
First of all, the argument he's making is not tenable. We have the right to analyze even laws that we ourselves have passed. And it is not new, it's not going to be the first time.
Table an amendment.
It's not going to be the last time.
Table an amendment.
And if we find that...
You know the rules.
If we find that there is a flaw,
Table
or there is a condition that is going to work against the well-being of Ghanaians, there is nothing in this world that prevents us from raising those issues and calling attention to that. So the mere fact that we were there, we participated, and it was passed,
does not take away our right to query and question something that we ourselves have done. He's a lawyer, he knows.
Could you have raised this query
even within the context of the judiciary of this country?
Could you have raised this query right from the
reviews? He knows that. Reviews are applied for.
This query right from the onset.
Right. I am not going to go into what could have been done.
We
are dealing with what is going on now. Our analysis has shown very clearly that if we were to strictly go by what he read out in terms of using the birth certificate and the passport as the primary forms of identity for registering to get a Ghana card, a bulk of the population definitely is going to be sidelined. So our argument is that these two pieces alone are insufficient in as far as a process of this nature that we believe should be inclusive is concerned. And in any case, if the voter's ID card is what it is, on the basis of which his party today is the governing party, what is the problem with us drawing attention to the fact that this should be included? We haven't said that anything should be taken out. We are saying that only about 2 million Ghanaians have access to passports. Just about another, I think, 7 million or so have access to birth certificates. What of the rest of them? And you are thinking that Ghanaians in this part of the world, in where I come from, have the capacity to be able to get a commissioner of oath?
They have families.
To swear them in. What of those who are orphans, who have no families, who have no relatives? Why do you want to burden them? What is wrong? What is wrong with allowing the voters' ID? What is wrong with allowing? What is your problem with the voters' ID?
I don't get it. Why you're wasting everybody?
We are not wasting your time. That is what you think. That is what you think.
Please allow him.
You don't decide how we use our time. You are not any more Ghanaian than any of us. You are not any more Ghanaian than those who will not have access to a birth certificate, who will not have access to a passport, who don't have relatives, who lives in parts of the country where even accessing them is a problem. So this is your argument and pushing back against what is a commonsensical issue that we have raised. I mean, I simply can't understand. What are you worried of? What, I mean, is it going to take anything away?
I put that question to you.
Is it going to take anything away if we agree to include the voters' ID? And so if we have come to the realization that the current prescription put forward is not very conducive and certainly is not going to be as inclusive, and we are asking that we add the voters' ID card, I don't see why this should be a basis to cast aspersions and insinuations and even bring in party executives as though we are just a herd of cattle sitting there, zombies who have to be nudged or slapped on the back of the head for us to function. I mean, how many times have we not reviewed? How many times have we not reviewed laws in Ghana? Right. You have been covering.
Yes, I put that question to you.
Politics, and you know the issue. We have reviewed laws in Parliament. Even your own government. You have brought amendments severally.
So table an amendment.
Well, who says we are not going to do that? We have many options. The fact is that we have several options, and that is because we believe that the law certainly will support the fact that the voter's ID card, which is a primary form of identity, cannot be excluded in the gamut of identities needed to ensure that one obtains a Ghana card. Our argument is simple. Let's make the process more inclusive. And if that means that bringing on board the voter's ID card, let's do it. What is your problem?
Dr. Jinapo, so that's the argument from the two sides in the House. What is your view of this?
I think, first of all, just to sum up everything, I'll say it's a needless litigation. Needless in the sense that, you see, right, the point is this. The card that people or Ghanaians are going to be given should not be seen as a tool for the award of citizenship. No. I mean, I sitting here, I'm a Ghanaian by virtue of birth. And whether I have a card or not, it does not and should not take away my citizenship. This card is just a representation or an empirical manifestation of this is Dr. Jinapo, this is his biodata. So even if I don't have the card, it does not mean that I cease to be a Ghanaian. So that needs to be what? That needs to be understood. And if that is the case, I find it quite worrying. That's why I said it's a needless litigation. I would have thought that there needs to be a bipartisan agreement in terms of what means. We are looking at the means. It's not about the card. What means can we use to capture as many Ghanaians as possible? There's no way that you can capture every Ghanaian using anybody. What is the most appropriate means that will be able to capture as many Ghanaians as possible? The vehicle upon which people are going to be captured as it stands now, the four of us probably do qualify. I have a passport, he has a passport, you have a passport, you have a passport. But look at the other side. Ask this cameraman, just do a random sampling and find out how many people fit into this mechanism. So if I hear people say that, look, let's look at how we can broaden what? The means of capturing people. I don't have a problem with that. But we must also be careful not to abuse it. You get a point? If you want to capture a lot of people, you must also be careful not to put, not to open it such that what? It becomes a subject of what? Abuse. Where a lot of people, as he made reference to Amakufibua, where a lot of people in the border or whatever get into the, and you see, the irony here is that, right, sometimes when I listen to politicians, they cease to amaze me. I hear people talking about what? Abu Ramadan. Do you know what Abu Ramadan was? Abu Ramadan had to do with what? NHIS card. And you remember those times, the way NDC opposed that thing. NDC was strongly in support of what? Everybody using NHIS card. If you remember, Abu Ramadan, that Abu Ramadan we are talking about, he's not he's dead though. He's the deputy coordinator for what? NADMO. Today. Let me finish. Don't. Let me finish. Right. You remember the
Yes, I do.
Let me finish. The NDC opposed it so much that look, everybody, the NHS, they are going to. Let me finish, please. Let me make my point. All you guys were talking, I just kept quiet. But today, Abu Ramadan is not the celebrated Messiah of what?
The Mental Health Authority is likely to be closed down.
You get the point. On this particular issue, the reverse is also what?
The authority has been in the news for the past few weeks over lack of funds to support its operations. Though government has made assurances that the situation will improve, it is yet to materialize. The Chief Executive Officer of the authority, Dr. Akwesiose, hints of a possible return to cash and carry by June ending if the situation does not improve.
The mental health situation in terms of finances is dire. Now there in the sense that
it's possible.
We are already in the middle of the year, and you've not had any financial releases by the ministry.
That is what I'm saying. That
the mental health authorities have been supported all along
the means through which we are
by a donor partner, and the support by the donor partner is coming to an end at the end of June. And if it happens that way, and you're not getting support from the ministry, it means you'll be forced to shut down because you can't operate without funding. We cannot even keep our lights on. We cannot even get our cleaners to clean the place. You will be forced to shut down. On the part of the psychiatric hospitals, they will also not be able to admit patients. In their case, not so much because of the donor funding being cut. Well, not cut exactly, but the donor funding is coming to an end. By the sense that they are also not getting the support, the releases from the ministry. And they are actually running out of funds. They are only being supported by benevolent organizations and philanthropies and suppliers. And that is what they are also doing. And that is where. So if they don't have any funds, then it seems they'll be forced either to return to cash and carry.
Remember the Abu Ramadan issue. The Abu Ramadan, when
right, you heard Dr. Akwesiose, he is the Chief Executive Officer of the Mental Health Authority.
Right? But the voters register that we have now is what they are saying that we should what? Transport it into, what do they call it, into the national ID. So what happened to the argument that was made then? If today the voters' ID as it stands now is so valid and representative of the total population, then what were we talking about? And that is why I'm saying that we need to have what? A constructive dialogue, devoid of any kind of what? Personal interest. But for me, as it stands now, this particular issue or this particular mechanism can be quite problematic, because if I'm not captured and really I'm a Ghanaian and I'm not given a card, we should be prepared to what? To get a lot of people going to court. Because you cannot deprive them of their citizenship.
We have Stranek already in court and others. But Honorable Mesa, let me put this question to you. If we agreed after the Abu Ramadan ruling that the voter ID card has now become a unique representation of who a Ghanaian is, what is the problem, or why are we not using it to get people onto this kind of card?
When did we come to that realization?
Oh, I thought the ruling said that once we have deleted names of those who use NHIS to register, and we have also reissue new cards.
You missed the point.
What is the point that I missed?
You missed the point.
Right.
You see, you are not bound to vote. There's no compulsion. It's a voluntary act.
Right.
And so we are not essentially improving the voters' ID card. No.
But wouldn't we
that's not the exercise.
Wouldn't we fault the Constitution if we don't get you the opportunity to vote as a people? Assuming we put impediments in your way so that you're unable to register.
How does the compilation of the national database,
the Ghana card,
yes, place an impediment on anybody's route to
we're told that one of its mandate is to be used as a card to get onto the national voter roll. So if we don't get it, it means that you can't get onto the voter roll.
You see, the point is this. This is not an event. And Doc, you see, the mass registration, okay, it's not going to close the window after it's concluded. The NIA offices are going to be open all year round for anybody who doesn't have the opportunity to register during the mass registration period to go and obtain a card at any time. It's a permanent office that is being set up that any child who is born tomorrow would be issued a card, whether the mass registration is completed or not. In any event, if you look at the provisions of the law, clearly there's ample opportunity in there for people who do not have passports and birth certificates. Who necessarily, you mentioned your grandmother.
What is the problem with the voter ID card?
You see, I don't know what the problem with the voter ID card is, but the law says, and we all agree that it is entirely possible
for it to be used.
People have voters ID card who may not necessarily be Ghanaians.
I
don't have a problem.
It's the same with passport and birth certificate.
So what are we doing now? We're trying to build a better system. That's why the law says that even if you have those documents, the officers would interview you to ascertain whether indeed the documents that you have presented are legitimate or not. So we are trying to build a much more credible system that we can all vouch for. You say no. Include everything else that is in existence.
It's not everything else.
But that's exactly what you are saying. But voters ID card. So, and if you don't include a voters ID card, you will be disenfranchising some people. How about the NHIS card? Would it not be disenfranchising some people as well?
The court has ruled that it is
absolutely. And so the framers of this bill that went into the consensus building that Doc made reference to in Parliament agreed that to enable us build a credible system, let us limit the identification to these two and then leave room for people who do not have these two identifications for their family members to vouch for their nationality or citizenship by way of oath, so that if it turns out that tomorrow we find out that the oath that you deposed to was in fact erroneous or was intended to defraud, we can hold you accountable. It is all intended to build a credible system that we can all vouch for. What is the problem?
Before I go to Dr. Park, I hope you're not suggesting that laws made by Parliament cannot be re-looked at.
Let him table an amendment.
Okay, so you're saying it can be re-looked at.
Let them bring it up.
The process.
Completely.
Okay. Dr. Park, so this is argument. He's suggesting that if the minority has a problem, well, there's no need to boycott. Table an amendment and then get it done.
Well, Brian, first of all, he doesn't have to tell us what to do. Okay. We decide the course of action that we seek to deploy. We have decided to boycott. And we are doing that. He has his Ghana card. I have chosen not to take my Ghana card, right? We have also put in the public domain what we think we are going to do. That doesn't mean that we are restricted to those options. Of course, leadership is still discussing the options. But I think the important point must be made that we are only asking that because this is a national program of immense importance, it is important that we widen the window of opportunity and make it easier for more Ghanaians to be part of it. That is why we are speaking about inclusivity. And that's why we feel that excluding the voter's ID card and highlighting only the passport and the birth certificate,
and then of course
as the primary relative. Yes, but that is secondary.
And
that is captured under B. That is captured under B. I know, but the problem is that we don't want to discourage people. We don't want to do anything that would discourage people from being on the Ghana card. And look, it has consequences. We shouldn't take it for granted. If you listen to the narrative, you even read, the act and the law, the card is going to become a primary means of accessing services. And we shouldn't take that for granted. So why wouldn't we want as many Ghanaians to have access to this card if we know that by including the voter's ID card, this is going to allow many more Ghanaians to participate? The idea is to reduce the obstacles, to allow for more people to be part of it. And I don't see why my good friend, Honorable Mercer here, seems to be throwing tantrums
but there are no obstacles.
about what we believe is commonsensical. Yes, we may have been blindsided by not thinking about this, but if we have become aware that excluding the ID card, the voter's ID card, is not going to be allowing for a more inclusive process, there's no reason why we shouldn't raise that issue. And we shouldn't be shy. We shouldn't be shy about stating it. I mean, only a fool does not change his of a mind if you become aware of new conditions, new circumstances.
Let me give Dr. Jinapo the last word on this. And
that warrant a change in the course of action. And that's exactly what we are doing.
Doc.
Right. I think entrenched positions by both sides of the political aisle will not solve this problem. And I go back to the proposal that I made. I think we need to have a bipartisan consensus and look at the way forward. If you remember very well, when we're doing the 2016 election, during the biometric registration of the voters' ID, you remember the position of the MPP. I mean, the MPP was one of the most vociferous advocates of making sure that people were registered biometrically. And I don't know of you, but if you go to a bank like Commercial Bank and you happen to more or less give your name and even date of birth, they are able to generate your biodata with your picture represented in the voter's ID on the screen. The point that I'm trying to make here is that even though we've had problems in terms of our registration of Ghanaians, I think we are making improvement. And I would say by far from 1992 till now, the 2016 registration of voters, Ghanaians through the voters' ID was one of the best. That notwithstanding, as my brother Mercer says, voting is voluntary. And in fact, there are some people who are Ghanaians today who are adults who probably do not have the voters' ID.
And they've never voted either.
You understand what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to, I would really wish that if it's even possible, if we are using the voters' ID as an addition to all these, all you need to do is to transfer your biodata. I don't have to go and raise it because they already have my data, they have my picture. All they need is to transfer it. But as I said, look, we also have to be very careful for the system not to be abused. But I hope.
Will the voter roll be an abuse?
Oh, the voter, you know very well that there are people, as you said, even passports. There are people who are here who have passports and stuff. But you see, the bottom line is that if I'm a Ghanaian and I happen not to have a Ghana card, that should not deprive me of my citizenship. And beyond that, even though this program is not a one-time activity, by the psyche, orientation, and behavior of Ghanaians, if after 1 year I don't have a card, even when they start, you can see the mad rush. So, generally speaking, Ghanaians would think that, look, we need to have this thing now. And that is why I think even the NIA haven't done that much of education in terms of this whole program. I mean, people don't even understand and appreciate much when it comes to this. So let's see how it shapes up. But if the minority wants to go to court, I don't have a problem with that.
The first group is already in
but
court,
I would have wished that this thing is structured out of court.
You keep making all kinds of accusations. Who is hiding behind? Nobody's hiding anymore.
I hope Honorable Mesa is not saying
is
that
somebody hiding in somebody's
pocket.
Is somebody hiding in somebody's pocket? He's talking about hiding. Is somebody hiding in somebody's pocket?
Old Vandals, I'm grateful. We have to end our conversation here this morning.
And, when you bring a bunch of Commonwealth boys, you can expect the time to elapse so that you know it.
All right, and Dr. Ahmed Jinapor is a lecturer, University of Education, an Old Vandal. Dr. Clement Apak, a member of Parliament for Busa South, an Old Vandal. Honorable Andre Japamesa, member of Parliament for Second Year, an Old Vandal too.
Wow,
grateful for your time.
Unique.
Stay with us. There's more after this.